Hello, I'm Duncan. Welcome to one of my hot takes. This hot take is about reaction woods as defined by science. So let's get to it. Quickly, I need to briefly define what reaction woods are. Now, the image here on this slide shows one of the best books one could buy on the science of reaction woods in trees. Indeed, the publisher Springer has a suite of highly authoritative books on the biology of trees. Fortunately, these high quality books tend to be very expensive. So, scientists have defined what reaction woods are, well, many decades ago. In essence, this is specialized wood that's formed on specific strain scenarios that is generally denser, less favorable for sap flow, where the wood anatomy is substantially changed in terms of having smaller vessel or trachea diameters, higher content of wood fibers, and changes in cellulose strand arrangements. In addition, reaction woods are associated with what's called posture control, in that growth stresses created within the reaction wood helps to pose the tree's stem or branch in a good orientation for light capture, well, typically for light capture. 3 reaction woods are currently recognized in science. Compression wood, mostly formed in coniferous species, gymnosperms, and tension wood, mostly formed in broadleaves, angiosperms, and flexure wood, a more recently found reaction wood, formed in many trees as a response to unidirectional flexing of their stems, which is common in urban trees that grow in street canyons, because when the wind blows up and down the street canyon, and the trees basically sway up and down the street, and this leads to oval stems being created with reaction wood at the tips of those ovals, if you like, in cross section. Although I've yet to write the associated paper, I'm also very lucky to have identified a 4th reaction wood in trees, and probably the most commonly occurring one that you could find in a tree. My research work on branch junctions in trees has found a specialist wood that forms in the axil of branch junctions to resist them breaking apart. This is called auxiliary wood, and it fulfills all the scientific definitions of reaction wood. So I hope to lay claim to this quite big scientific discovery soon. Okay, so reaction woods are quite well defined in science, and there are even books written about them. So what possibly could be the problem that it deserves a hot take? Well, there are a few minor problems only here, to be honest, but they're worth stating to this class because of what I get to see as a tutor. Now, I've divided this slide into in science and in industry, because this is more of a problem with misconceptions in the arboricultural industry rather than within science. In science, I think it would just be useful for more of the texts or the authors to make clear that reaction wood is a specialized wood growing in a particular zone of the tree in a particular part of a component part of a tree, and it varies in its intensity. And as you cut into that section with the reaction wood, you get a drift into those more extreme qualities of the wood. It's not like you go through normal wood and then suddenly it's reaction wood. No, it drifts into that quality, and indeed it can drift out of that quality should that reaction wood not be stimulated to grow later on. Often, reading about reaction woods, you get the impression that there is just like normal wood and then reaction wood, but the reality is there is that sort of ecotone, this drift towards the denser anatomically changed wood in the zone where it develops in a tree. That's really, I would just like to say, it's better to have that comprehension, and a lot of the texts don't really give that. In the industry, however, there is more of a problem. The term reaction wood is highly misused. That is the key issue that I want to raise in this hot take. It's often used to mean any wood that the arborist or tree surveyor considers to have grown in reaction to stresses and strains that cause some distortion from a circular stem or a circular branch. Now, that is not the scientific definition of reaction wood, and it's rather annoying to see what is a well-defined term being misused so often, diluting it or misrepresenting its meaning. One does not have to go far to find arboricultural literature that misuses the term reaction wood in this way. The term reaction wood does not mean wood that has grown in reaction to loading. What I would highlight is that to try and counter this mistaken use of the term reaction wood, some in the industry have adopted the informal term response wood in order to talk about bulges and ribs that they find and they want to report about on trees. As this term is not defined by science, we could take this very broad term and consider it as quite informative, and it helps us to describe tree structures as viewed from the outside. By the way, on the images of this slide, there are two examples of compression wood, a reaction wood. The top shows a side branch in a thuya, a western red cedar, where it looks somewhat like a human arm with lots of muscle development. Compression wood has developed on the underside of the branch near its point of attachment to help keep that branch in a good position for light capture as it has elongated and got basically more leverage and heavier. So I would note that often one cannot be certain that a reaction wood is formed in a tree stem. It could just be slightly denser wood or just more wood in that location. But however, for side branches of this extreme form, I think it's appropriate to predict the presence of reaction wood in a shape like that in a conifer. Also, the second image is where a thuya side branch has been cut across by a contractor, and the quicker development of compression wood to the bottom of the branch is clearly visible in this cross section. So it's giving you an idea what the branch would look like if you cut it up, and you can see there are more increments, wide increments lower down in the branch showing that development. And then if you were to extract the wood, you would find that it had the qualities of compression wood. Okay, so short hot take, what have we learned? First, I would say if you're going to be a tree expert and assess trees in detail, then you should have a good understanding of the scientific definition of reaction woods, recognizing that one cannot necessarily tell that a reaction wood is formed in a component part of a tree unless one extracts some wood and examines it in detail. Second, I've argued that we should not accept the drift in meaning of the term reaction wood that has occurred in our own industry outside of science, mostly by those who haven't paid enough attention to the science or have misinterpreted the term, perhaps by mistake, not deliberately. Wherever I see it, I do my best to get the wording changed. And third, and this is a bit more debatable really, but perhaps we could welcome the informal use of the term response wood instead of the industry using reaction wood, because it can provide a useful description as part of an argument about a tree structure. For instance, one might say, well, despite the crack in the stem being quite old, there's no sign of any response wood, which brings to mind, a mental picture of what the outside of the tree looks like, why that crack is more of a problem. But it doesn't need to define what the response wood is in detail or what it would consist of anatomically. If you use the word reaction wood, you're then, you're nailing yourself professionally to a term you can't prove that a reaction would be formed. In the image on this last slide, well, it shows a tree with a bark included junction, and there are two bulges that have developed either side in this beech tree, Vega sylvatica. Just looking from the outside, we cannot be certain that these bulges contain reaction wood, although they may contain some auxiliary wood, as I found in some of my experiments. What we can say with confidence is that wood has grown in compensation for the mechanical deficiency of the weak junction. And to avoid using a long expression like that, we could just say that some response wood has formed, a very general term about wood that's grown in response to strain on a particular component part of a tree. To my mind, it's better doing that than calling these bulges reaction wood, with no evidence that they consist of that specific scientifically identified tissue or that all of the bulge is reaction wood, which is very unlikely. Thanks for listening to my hot take. Talk again soon.